So if they're missing people coming through that sidewalk because it's not 100% secure, yeah, you're gonna have breaches throughout the community. So we'll have to come up with a better design to alert the officer, or maybe dim the lights in the gatehouse to be able to see out better. And that's part of my assessment of going with security, to analyze everything from the gatehouse to patrol to the officers that we have on staff.
Okay, and what we'll expect is something from you making recommendations that
Correct.
the safety and security work group can take up and pass on to.
Yeah,
to
with
these
cost estimates.
With yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. Technology comes in, and we can explore those avenues as well.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I know the other communities around us do have gates on the sidewalks.
Uh-huh.
Colonial does,
There-
Plantation does, Bridgetown.
Okay, it's that is certainly something to be considered as
Yeah.
to, that has its own problems, but. it's
I couldn't
something-
get out of Bridgetown one day. I walked in from the back, and you even had to punch a code in to get
get out.
out their
Right.
gate.
Oh, really?
Right.
I had to walk back around to the back,
I see, okay.
through Palazzo.
Well, you could have taken a car.
I guess I could have taken a car.
Yeah, okay, well, Jason, we'll expect to hear from you recommendations of things that we can do to increase the security at the gate.
Yes.
Ron and John, are you hearing these discussions a little better?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay, that's good, I think,
Much better.
okay, that's good.
Great.
Okay, Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Joe?
Yes, I just had a resident tell me that they had a guest come in, and we can provide the gate with the names of people that can come in and have regular passes. And the person that they had coming in made a comment that they came in, gave their name, and the guard said fine, and never checked any identification. The concern was, why don't we check a license, or a lot of communities require you to show the driver's license.
Correct.
So that the name, anybody can pick up a name, but if you don't have the right identification, you can't get into those communities. So they just expressed a concern that, geez, it was really easy to get in here, I just gave a name.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, and I apologize that happened. But it is concerning. The post orders specifically say that all IDs need to be checked, or all people coming in, IDs need to be checked. And that's part of the thing that, part of my assessment is to see, are they actually doing that? And the people who aren't doing that, they're not gonna be here. I know that there's one, maybe two officers that have been here quite a long time, very familiar with the residents, and vice versa, and she does an excellent job. And if I can get a whole staff of Judys, if anybody knows Judy,
Yeah.
I will make that happen, because that's the type of officer that Pelican Preserve deserves and they need. So the lackadaisical type of officer, or the ones that are complacent, if you see them now and they continue doing them, you won't see them later. There'll be a better quality person in there that'll follow the post orders and do what the post orders say. It's easy when somebody comes through to check an ID. I mean, I don't see there's rocket science behind that. So like I said, they're not doing it, we'll make the adjustment.
One of the local communities has a sign when you're pulling in that says driver license ID required at the gate, so you
Yes.
get a little bit of pre-warning before you get to the gate.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that would be
Mhm.
worthwhile.
Yeah,
I hate to
I
have
see it
signs
a
all
lot.
over the place, but
Yeah. I see that a lot, and you bring up a good point about driver's license, because there is communities that require just a photo ID. The only problem with that is, if you get contractors come in or what have you that do not show a driver's license, chances are they probably don't have a driver's license. It's suspended or what have you. Therefore, the risk factor of coming on the property of an accident or what have you, is great. So, and like I said, a lot of things that we're talking about now, I'm certainly gonna be working with Christopher
I
and
think-
Scott to make sure that the communities
I
are
think
safe.
the whole thing of the discipline and of the force in the gatehouse is
Right.
something that we
That's
gotta
key.
keep
First
working
It's
on.
not been good.
It's not been good, we have to keep
Yeah.
upgrading.
Oh, like
Okay.
as an example, I think our exit gate's only supposed to be open Monday through Friday during the day. It was open this weekend, most of the weekend. And I know that's in the survey,
Yes,
but I think it's another reason we probably should just end up closing it, like as Sarah said, there's more gates being hit with it being raised part of the time. And there's never a line to get out, it's only a line to come in.
Right,
Okay,
right.
all right. Well, Jason, thank you. We look forward to your recommendations of things that we should be doing
Okay.
to enhance the gate. Any other questions of Jason?
No, just welcome aboard, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
yeah,
same
good.
here. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Okay.
All right.
Chris, Scott, Sarah, any other items that you have? Okay, well, thank you all. Okay, let's return to the budget.
Okay, the budget, I went through and I updated the expenses through the end of April, without any substantial changes in what it would, project out to through the end of the year. There were 3 line items that went up a little bit, but they weren't substantial. One went up, gatehouse repairs went up $1,700 projected out. And then gate repairs, first one was gatehouse repairs and janitorial went up 1,700. Gate repairs went up 1,400. But other than that, everything we projected out is pretty much in line with what we have through April now too. We never did get an estimate, I don't think, from FPL what they're asking for this year as far as an increase. So I just left it at the 3%.
Yeah, when they originally gave us their 4-year plan, this
Mhm.
year, 2019, would be, I think, 2.9%.
Yeah.
But we don't know how Hurricane Irma's gonna affect anything now going forward. They might increase just for those costs incurred.
Yeah, but I thought there was another hurricane one, a temporary one that's expiring this year, so they might be a wash.
Yep.
So I figured the 3% is good for the utilities.
Yep.
So everything else seems to be right in line with the budget as it was projected in the last one.
So
Other
Nancy.
than the expenses for landscaping, which I'll change that.
It seems to me that from the 2018 budget to the 2019 budget, the bottom line is now going up by how much?
Let me find
The one we have, the one I'm looking at is a March number.
Yeah, I'm looking for the one you gave us from Stephen.
Yeah, well, the one from Stephen, if we look at the HOA agreement number, which is
Yeah.
on page 11, it would appear that the budget versus the budget from last year is going up about $33,000.
Yeah, and that'll increase for the landscaping.
And,
Yeah, because the 2018 was 1,226,000, and right now we're at 1,260,000, and we'll be adding just another 8,000 or 9,000 to that for landscaping.
Okay. So, what we're saying here is that the increase in the quote HOA agreement
Mhm.
number is pretty small.
Well, it'll be about 40,000 probably.
Yeah, and which on a percentage basis is.
Pretty small.
0.3%.
Yeah.
So that piece of the budget, it would appear, is not the problem part, but the reason I ask that we look at the rest of it is that obviously we're having substantial increases in the waterway management services, the ponds budget.
Mhm.
Yep.
Going up from 508, up by almost.
589 to 774.
774, almost $200,000, which is, 30% increase, I guess. Substantial increase. And,
That's 2 items.
mhm,
We now have the conservation reserve areas, it's $109,000, $110,000 a year,
right.
and then all the new bonds.
Mhm. Ron, the reserve number that we have in here, for the capital program for the budget is $363,000. Is that a reasonable number?
I think you can reduce that number to the 330,000.
Okay,
I think that's the number we put in for this year, the actual for this year.
mhm,
And that should be a good number. So you can reduce that 360.
okay.
To 330 even, 330,000?
330.
Yeah, that would be fine.
That would be
Okay.
enough? And that,
Don't forget that, go ahead.
does that make any assumption about a recommendation that we transfer an extra $500,000 into the reserve?
Yeah, that's what I was just bringing up.
Yeah.
That's assuming, put that extra 500,000 in there.
That's assuming that we would do that.
Correct.
Mhm.
And we can afford to do that easily.
Yes, I think we can. And I think we kind of agreed that that's probably something we want to do.
Currently, we have 3.6 million
Yes,
in
right.
unassigned.
Yeah. So, so that number would bring us back to being almost even, Nancy,
Mhm.
on that part of the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah,
Is the potential change in the boardwalk and the bridges gonna be a capital expense?
That's,
Or is that a subject for later discussion?
I would think that would probably come out of some of that unassigned funding that we have
Yes.
sitting there. It'd have
Yeah.
to, if we did the $400,000 one, definitely.
mhm.
It would not be a.
But it seems like a long-term expenditure.
It would be a
Yes,
long-term
it would be a
expenditure,
long-term
because
expenditure.
we expect, I would assume those would have.
I would agree with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look now at the, where we stand, total expenditures, and we're also, would be up by almost $400,000.
Yeah.
Because we are also getting hit with not only the increase in the ponds budget, but also increases in the overhead
Mhm.
that we're receiving from Gateway. They are adding people, and they have to add offices in order to add the people, and they have other expenses, and that has driven up the numbers substantially there as well. And if you go to the first page we gave you, which is the assessment summary, assuming that we still have the same number of EAUs, and that was last year's EAU count, I believe.
I haven't seen any.
And that varies, that can vary up and down from year to year. As you see, our people will be facing substantial increases in their assessments. For those who pay debt service, it's gonna be 9 to 10%, and for those who don't pay debt service, it's gonna be a 12% increase. Very substantial.
But considerably less than the Greater Gateway.
But
Sure.
considerably
They're-
less than Greater Gateway, which is
20%,
60 or 23%, I think, that's going up. So this will be, a pretty big hit. It seems to me that at some point, we will need to get out some kind of a communication to people in Pelican Preserve as to what's causing this to happen.
When is Gateway putting out its notification to residents about the increase?
I don't know the exact date, it'll be coming out soon, but we're also putting it on our website, and we're also soliciting the homeowners association if they'd like a representative to come speak to them about it. And our public hearing is August 16th, which is when the board gets most of its feedback.
Well, I know in Pelican, as soon as you put the letter out that will go to the residents, we'll hear.
We will hear. We will
And
hear.
and for detail on the Gateway budget, it actually went up originally about 3%. They added one position. They were looking at a temporary building, but that money's already budgeted
Mhm.
this past year. And what really hit that is they put $500,000 in the budget to clean stormwater pipes. And, that system.
Mhm.
So, and we're not only looking at that, but some expenses related to cleaning the conveyances, and we're actually out cleaning some of those ourselves, but we're also looking into working with Colonial, because that could be somewhat of a bottleneck getting through a tree line and out to the interstate, and that system needs some maintenance. So it's a little off the subject, but I'll be meeting with the folks from Colonial this week to discuss that.
Mhm.
But it's really that stormwater expenditure that's pushing that budget up. And the one position we did add is for a stormwater supervisor, that almost full-time will be working on the ponds and the pipe cleaning.
Okay.
And that position is not supported by Pelican at all. That's a total gateway.
Yeah.
Since we have our own group that handles that. And the
Okay.
board has acknowledged that.
Yes, right.
Okay, now I have a question.
Sure.
In looking at these numbers, last year, we had proposed an increase, and at Ron's suggestion, this group took some of our excess funds and took that number down, so they only had a 2% increase. So what we're facing here is not just, it might not have been quite this much of an increase if we had let it go up a little bit more last year. So, this is probably, I hate to jinx anything, this is probably the last year that, unless something terrible happens, that we will have this kind of a jump in our budget.
And you
I totally agree, Nancy, and particularly in terms of what we have to support as a community with the waterways and all that other stuff. But there is a looming question mark out there. The Gateway is reviewing the assessment methodologies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which could have a neutral impact, or it could have a very negative, we don't really know.
That's a real unknown.
Yes.
That's a real unknown.
But that won't be this year, that'll be
Yeah,
next year.
and I might point out that not only did we just have a 2% increase this year, we had a 0% increase the previous year. So.
Nobody remembers good news.
Nobody, I understand that, but that's something to be remembered, and yes, it seems that people ought to recognize that we do need this kind of increase, that we and that will at least put us in a position where, other than the assessment methodology being changed, we should not have big
It
increases.
should be stable from here.
It should be pretty stable, yeah.
And last year, we used the capital reserve as our balance to keep it at that 2%. And
Right.
now with the capital reserve study, we're kind of locked into what the study says we should be putting in now.
Exactly, yeah.
So we can't use that to balance anymore.
Mhm. Okay. Chris, the one last question of you is, when do these numbers become final? I know what we put in originally, then gets adjusted, and when, in other words, the published number is the high mark, the high water mark. When do the adjusted numbers that get presented at the hearing in August, when are those submitted?
Those would come out within 2 weeks after that August 16th public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, those numbers, as you state, the high water mark,
Yeah,
were reported to the city and county, and the only place you can go now is down.
down, right, okay.
So,
But those are the numbers that will be used at that August 16th hearing? Is that
yes,
right?
and those could be adjusted, because between now and then, there's 3 budget workshops that the board will be having.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume they're gonna be cutting some items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first workshop was completed last week.
Yeah.
So we can't increase our HOA line number now. So even though we got these new numbers for the contracts, we can't increase our budget line item right now.
And whatever went out last week is
That's it.
is the high.
That's it.
the high.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
so we'll live with it.
Okay, yeah.
We're not that far off anyway.
No, we're not, and particularly if we reduce the capital reserve number,
Right,
we'll be right, pretty much in line, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Should
And
not
then,
be a
and then
problem.
we'll deal with the bridges and the boardwalk as a totally
As a
separate.
Yep.
off-
item. Yep. Okay. That gets us past the budget. The district engineer selection committee, Bob, do you want to tell us?
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nancy.
I'm gonna have to leave,
Yeah.
so can I just say
By all
very,
means.
very quickly?
Oh, yes, let's get to you on the
Number
bond
7.
up.
The bond update. You received some information in your package. We would like to go to the board as soon as possible with this. There's some discussion about that there would still be some excess funds and whether they would be used to do some more work in phase 1 of Pelican, or whether they would be used to pay down the bond. And one of the items is a pipe under the town center, and the issue there is, who owns that? Does the district own it, or is that WCI? And I think in the past, we've thought it was WCI. That presents an issue about whether it's appropriate to use the funds to pay for it. The other thing is, the Residents Alliance is in the early stage negotiations to purchase the town center from WCI Lennar, and this may or may not have some impact on those discussions. So what you have is just kind of an FYI. I don't think we're almost there, but I don't think we're quite there.
We're closer than we've ever been before.
Yeah. Bob's sort of running out of things in phase 1, is where we're at.
I think I have enough things to use up every dollar, but,
Okay,
Okay.
on that, I'm
Yeah.
done.
Thanks, Nancy.
and just as a further on the pipe under the building, we had a residence in Aviano which had a pipe under it, and back in the good old days, WCI did pay for that repair. We actually supervised the repair of the district, but they wrote the checks because it is in unsafe condition. And the same thing occurs down the town center. It's not ours. We didn't address it the first time. And as Nancy said, we wanted to make sure the Residents Alliance knew about it to get it fixed. And there is a thought right now that the pipes are part of district conveyance, but that's open to interpretation. As Nancy said, as long as it gets fixed sooner or later, somebody's gonna fix it. But that's why it's on the table, that's all.
Okay, but it's possible we can use the bond funds for that. right?
Well, I
It's
think-
Not as likely to use it for that.
Right.
Bob has proposed.
Yeah.
That's cloudy. At
That's-
best, that would be a cloudy issue. We have 2 clear ones.
Yeah, okay.
2 clearer ones.
Clearer ones. We have the precedent of aeration in all the ponds.
Right.
So the driving range pond should be pretty cut and dry. And then the last one is the berm that is needed behind the Viadana residence that flooded. That was, in my judgment, clearly a defective construction item. Lennar has walked away from it. They've already told us officially they're not gonna do anything about it. So we're gonna possibly tap into this fund to do it.
Mhm.
And we should have enough money to do both of those items.
Yes,
All right, thank you, Nancy.
okay. So I have to leave.
Bob, do you want to just?
Yeah, the district engineering selection, it has gone to the board. There were 3 candidates brought forward, and as I understand it, we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow, Thursday, to vet the remaining 3. One has dropped out since then, so there will be 2, Tetra Tech and one other company, and then the board will make its decision. So we're moving along, well with that process.
That's on the board agenda for Thursday?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
And then the board just prioritizes it, then they enter into contract negotiations, and that's really where the rubber hits the road. And I may also get some input from the advisory group to discuss that contract and specifics of it.
Yeah, we have a series of questions that were generated from all interested parties, and Chris has those, and those will be the foundation of the discussions with the 2 remaining candidates. They'll have to answer that, plus anything else the board comes up with, and then a decision will be made.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. GSCDD board meeting, I think we had a report from Ron. Bob and I both attended the bond workshop that they had last Thursday, or the budget
budget.
workshop. The budget workshop, and that's still playing out. So I don't think there's much to report there. Bob, you want to go on with Ponds Work Group?
Okay, I guess I've really given you a lot of information this week.
Yep.
And I'm gonna try to get down in the order in which that I have them. First, we have a proposal from the Ponds Work Group to do an annual catch basin cleaning. And the catch basins are, generally speaking, the graded areas in the streets where the stormwater runs off. You can look down in them. So we want to have an annual inspection of those at a cost of $20,070 per year. And this will be an ongoing, every year type of expense. We have in our community, there's 2 pages, we have in our community 460 catch basins, as well as 209 either head walls, mitered end sections, or flared end sections. So we have struggled in the work group with, should we inspect these things? Should we hire somebody to inspect? Should we clean them? And the reality of it, we've had a number of companies come in and clean, and we've never been totally satisfied with the effort that we're doing. So we're trying a different approach now, and what we're saying to ourselves is, we're gonna pay somebody to come out and open every one of these catch basins on a yearly basis, put a gauge in it and say, this catch basin is 36 inches deep, and it has 10% sediment, so we don't do anything, we just move on. We go to another one that's 30 inches deep, and if it's got 28 inches of sediment, then we're gonna have to address that. But we'll have data in which to make an informed decision of what we wanna clean or not clean. Now, $20,000 is a lot of money. However, to do this very thing, Gateway just had a contract that they just awarded for $263,000 to do far less. And they took the approach that we used to have, and that is that you go in, you inspect, and then you clean. And the service contractor gave Gateway a price to clean a 15-inch pipe by linear feet, and an 18-inch pipe, a 24-inch, a 30, 36, all the way up to 54. And the contractor and the district are betting, if you will, that they're gonna be dirty enough to warrant the expenditure of the $260,000. Okay, the Pelican Ponds Work Group has said, been there, done that, weren't happy with it. Whether it was Sewer Viewer, Shenandoah, Aquagen, it didn't matter who we had. So for the $20,000 a year, we're gonna try a totally different approach. And so I'm gonna make a motion that PPAC support this initiative so that we can present it to the board. We have budget money, it is all budgeted money. It's in our current budget to do this.
I'll second that motion for discussion. Questions of Bob on that? Seems to make sense, and so you say it's already in the budget for
The dollars are.
2019.
The dollars are in the budget.
Budget for 2019.
Well, actually, they've been there for years.
Yeah, but this is something that if we change the concept at some point.
Yes, and if it works, then that's good news, and if it doesn't, then we'll try something else.
Yeah. Okay.
And part of this is predicated on 2 things. The bidder in this case is Extreme, and we're gonna allow it to be at their discretion when they do most of these inspections. For catch basins, it's straightforward. But for mitered end sections, head walls, and those things, it is to their advantage to do it during the dry season, because then they don't have to put them in the water. And that's where some of the economies are coming, by allowing them to have a broad range of discretion as to when they do it. As long as every structure is inspected, and we know that, the data was inspected, who did it, and what they found, I'm comfortable with going forward with that.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Questions of Bob? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next we
6
have.
to 0.
We have in the packet aeration electric bill. we're finally getting these things organized where the pumps and et cetera are all being charged back to us. So there's some bills in the packet that demonstrate which, these happen to be Casella Way aerators. But I expect this will just continue to grow as we get smarter and smarter about paying the bills in FB&L. The next thing I was gonna talk about was the bond fund.
Yeah, Bob, just,
Sure, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find out the document that,
It is dated June 15th.
yeah, this is the pond numbers are listed?
Yeah, it comes from FP&L,
Yeah, okay.
and these are two of the aeration accounts that will now be going to Nancy. This wasn't in the big packet, this was all the handouts things over there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, the next one is what we were talking about in terms of the bond fund and how, I thought sure I spent all that money, to be honest with you. Once I found out it was still $180,000, I got all excited. It's gonna cost almost $100,000 to do the driving range pond,
Just to aerate.
just to aerate that, because that is one big sucker.
That is a big pond.
And then to do what we're expecting to do in Casella, in Viadana will probably be about another 30. So I think we might have 50,000 left to do the pipe if we can determine legally that that's an appropriate expenditure. So that's a TBD, and I'll keep the group up to speed as we go forward. The next one is the Carina permit. And just briefly, there are 26 homes behind Carina from Cypress Grove Boulevard up to the Weir, in which the Lennar WCI did not make the backyards big enough to support our easement access. And the proposal has been to have them fix that. Well, they weren't real receptive about fixing it. So what they did in the course of some other things going on in the district with South Florida Water Management is they shifted the burden of responsibility for the maintenance of that from Lennar and themselves to the district. And that took place about 4 weeks ago. So the purpose of the letter and why I'm bringing it up here now is Ponds Work Group initiated through Chris that we make the formal request at administrative hearing that this still be considered to be part of Lennar's obligation. There's a time certain date in which things like this have to be brought up, and we say, okay, even though we accepted it as the district, we object to this condition and we need Lennar to fix it. So that's all this is really saying, is that process, that clock is now running. I'm keeping Phil Rovner intimately involved in it. We've had meetings at the town center with the residents that were affected. And I honestly don't know where it's ever gonna go, but it's moving forward, so I want you to know it. The next thing, we have a proposal to aerate ponds 40 to 43. These are the first ponds in the Cypress Grove area and part of Track L in which WCI installed aeration. So the money that we're proposing here, and it's about $45,000, is to modify these 4 ponds to bring them up to the standard that we have in the rest of Pelican. And it's quite honestly, it's a modest amount of money for what we're getting, but I'm gonna make a proposal, and I have money in the budget for it, but I'm gonna make a proposal that PPAC authorize the expenditure not to exceed $46,000 to upgrade the aeration in ponds 40, 41, 42, and 43.
We have a second for that motion.
A second.
Chris, Joe seconds it. Further discussion? Bob, I think you had been telling us this for some time, that there was gonna be a need to upgrade the aeration in those ponds.
And this takes us through Track L. We've still got to go through Carina. We're gonna have to go through all the rest of them over the course of time. But we won't be spending any more this budget year, because this will do it. But we'll be doing more in the next budget years. But they're a whole lot better than the $400,000 and $300,000 we have been spending in the past. And the bond fund money could not be appropriated to these, because these are part of Cypress Grove, New Pelican.
Oh, yeah.
The next thing.
Any
Oh,
questions,
yeah,
any
other
questions of Bob on that one? There being no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 6-0.
All right, the next has to do, and this is, the genesis of this is the flooding. This is Irma. So we have been investigating, we, the collective district, Tinkle, Schumacher, Geppert, all of the input factors to the flooding. And we have just done an analysis of the 5 named weirs plus the 3 weirs in Gateway called Stony Brook, Commons Park, and Hampton. And the analysis is looking as the weir at the right elevation, and is it the weir at the elevation that was permitted? And then secondarily, is the width of the opening of the weirs correct? One of the places we think we want to go with all this is to have adjustable weirs. We're not totally sure about that yet, but that's one of the potentials to eliminate the future buildup of water. In the course of trying to analyze this, one of the key components that has come to light is a system for measuring the depth of the water at the weir at any given point in time and how much water is flowing through it. We need to build a database, and the database would be take place by virtue of having meters at the weirs in which the data is recorded and transmitted, and we are proposing that it be transmitted here to the district offices. The main Gateway Board discussed this item at length in their last meeting. The total cost would probably be a little bit greater than $80,000 or $90,000, and they didn't reach a consensus. So what I am proposing to PPAC is that we take it upon ourselves to install the first 2 components within Pelican, and that would be weir number 2 at Carina, and that's number 3 at Carina, and number 2 at Treeline. And what we're proposing is we're going to put in what Gateway's eventually going to get to, whenever they get around to it. And then the money that we put out now would be reimbursable to us. Once this whole master project goes in, whatever money we put out, which would be less than $20,000, and we'd get it back. Now, since I put this on the agenda and wrote this, I've had discussion with Mr. Tinkle, and he's pretty confident he's going to get the whole package run through the board to approve, so we may not have to do this. But if that fails, and things have failed, I would like to make a motion that we move forward not to exceed $20,000 to put flowway weirs in the Carina and the Treeline Boulevard weirs.
Okay. Second of that?
I will second that.
Okay. Further discussion, any questions of Bob? It seems to me that approach makes sense, and certainly from our perspective, if we put out the money, we'll eventually get it back.
Yes, they're going to have this.
Any further?
I have one question, John Grant.
Sure.
Where's this data getting put?
These are monitoring stations at each of the weirs that would tell the community how much water is going through at any given.
Where is the data going to be at the monitoring at that?
It's generated there and it's transmitted to the district offices. There's a couple of.
Handling that.
There's a couple of choices on how this would be done, John. You could send somebody out there with a clipboard every day to record it, or you can, for a couple bucks extra, you could have it all sent to the district offices or the district engineering office, whatever, to a central location where it's recorded for history. We're going to opt out to not have a human being that we want to master data collection.
And that capability is actually in place because it's no different than the system we use for our wastewater lift stations, where that data is.
Okay, so you have the capability at the district office to receive this data?
Yes. And we have a graphic
That's what I wanted to
interface
know.
also, yeah.
Yep. So this seems to make sense for everybody.
Who will be putting that equipment in, for the monitoring equipment?
Getting 2 bids right now, and one of the vendors that we're leaning toward is the same vendor that Lehigh Drainage District uses, because they have 133 miles of drainage canals, and they have about 133 of these instruments in place. And we're gonna go over and have a field visit and talk with their folks about it.
the real purpose behind this is to spur the board into doing it,
Sure.
to be honest with you.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 6-0, again, Nancy.
Okay, one of the other things that we're considering in this whole idea of the flooding is we are gonna make a proposal that the tree line weir be lowered to, I believe, 19 feet, right now it's at 20. But between tree line and I-75, there's a 3-foot differential. In every other place, they're usually a foot to 2 feet max. So we're not quite sure why we have what we have. Mr. Tinkle just found a document dated 1996 that referenced that the weirs in Pelican were temporary structures. There has been no follow-up documentation, but that kind of makes sense for the fact that our weirs may not be exactly correct. And then secondarily, the opening of the weir, the width of the opening in Carina is at 20 feet and it should be 25. So there's a lot of components in this whole thing that still are not understood. Mike Tisch just recently discovered that there's another potential restriction between Colonial and I-75. So we're putting extreme divers, I think the district's got extreme going in there to inspect it and clear the obstructions, but it may be the proverbial cork in the bottle. So there's a lot of things that are going on in this respect, and any and all of them can only help us. So there's quite a bit going on. Last but not least, there was a discussion at the board of the need of having a model, a hydraulic model of all of Gateway, including Pelican. The potential cost for something like that is close to $200,000. But the reality is that the way Gateway was built in Pelican is we have a bunch of chimneys, and we have data on the individual chimneys, but we don't have a master picture of how the entire system functions, in which we can take good hard data to South Florida and the Army Corps of Engineers to elicit support to make changes. So again, the board choked at the cost of the $200,000, although they did approve $45,000 to do one section of it.
Well, they ended up not approving that.
Oh, they did?
No, they said they're gonna sit and wait because anytime, couldn't guarantee the permit, Hampton wanted to be able to open a weir and push water downstream, and they said, well, where's it gonna go downstream? And if you can't answer that question, of course, we all know where it goes.
Yeah, comes to us.
So they stopped that and they said they'd rather look at the big picture model.
Well, great, that's what they should have done right from the beginning. To that end, I'm happy to announce that the Ponds Work Group has 2 new members, Vince Galuccio and Al Porcia. And Al brings a career and a lifetime of flood management analysis with him. He did this for a living. He's got his master's degree. He worked for a number of jurisdictions up north, and this is what he did. And he has accepted the assignment from Ponds to participate with Gateway and whatever group we have here to do the modeling. Now, he's not gonna do it, but he's gonna do the sanity check for what's there and make sure that the community's interests are protected. So I'm really thrilled about that.
Bob, just for,
Yep.
if you would provide, Diane likes to keep track of who the members are.
Yep, I do for insurance purposes. I've got, these are 2 new members that just came in last
And you'll
month.
provide-
And I will
you'll
provide that
provide
to
her with
her
that
so that they can
information.
get the insurance.
Mhm.
Yep. The last item, and I know you never thought I'd get there, but is surge protectors for the 29 aeration cabinets that were submerged last year in the flood. FEMA offered us, first of all, they're gonna reimburse us for the damaged cabinets to the $75.25. And along with their proposal for, we need to raise them, and we've done that, they're paying for that, $75.25. And they said that if we put in surge suppressors, they would pay for that too, $75.25. So we are pursuing both of those things. The cabinets have been raised. We got a cost estimate for the surge protectors, which went to Mr. Schumacher, and we're moving forward with that. So it's just informational for everybody. We should be stronger next year than they were the last time, the next flood.
You don't need any funds approved
Nope,
to do that work?
nope, we have repair money in there. We're good with all that.
Okay.
And last but not least, the famous downspouts. The downspout project should be, as we speak, finishing up in Portofino. Praise the Lord. And next we'll be doing Bellagio. And we will finish up, because we've run out of money, we will finish up in Solaro. We have enough funds to finish Solaro. And there won't be any more until next year, when the next budget year begins. We've been spending a lot of money. And we're about out. That's gonna take $200,000 to do Solaro, and we have enough money for that.
And when you say next budget year, in other words, in the 2019?
18-19.
18-19?
18-19 budget year, we'll go again and spend another $107,000.
Or early 19, yeah, fiscal.
We're in 17-18 now.
Well, we're in fiscal year
We're
18,
in fiscal year
2018.
Okay, so
Now,
it'll be
you-
fiscal year
you-
19.
19, you will do some more.
We'll do some more until we run out of money. We may not do it. We may have to wait 2 years to get enough money to do the next community. But we are rolling right along and getting them all. The Pareto and Pistoia neighborhoods, which we've talked about numerous times, WCI has told us that they're currently doing them, the homes with the third drain that we wanted. We have yet to see our first bill, and I've asked Tetra Tech to go out and do a field study, and that has not happened yet, to make sure that what they're doing, they are doing right. So I'm gonna take it on faith that they're doing it, but we really haven't seen it. You haven't got the first bill yet, have you? For those homes, we are on the hook for $450 or $480 a home to install this stuff. But that's a whole lot better than the $2,500 a home we're paying now. And believe it or not, that's all I got.
All right, any more questions of Bob?
Hey, Bob, this is Ron.
Yes.
Who have you been dealing with in Bellagio on the downspout initiative?
I haven't dealt with anybody, but Doug Zanter is. I just don't happen to be familiar with who he's dealing with. I assume the HOA, but I don't really know. I can find that out, Rob.
If you don't mind, because as a resident over there, there's been zero information put out. So I'm just kind of curious what's going on and who you guys are communicating with.
Okay, I will find that out.
Thanks.
Okay, no other questions of Bob. We'll move on. Safety and Security Work Group, number of items. The first, I believe I put a communication out to you that we discovered that the two projects that we have going on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. One is more signage and striping on the road at the bridge on Pelican Preserve Boulevard. The other one is improved markings, pedestrian markings at the intersection of Veneto and Pelican Preserve Boulevard. Those were recommended in the traffic study by Johnson Engineering. They said it would cost about $14,000 to do it, and we approved that and sent it on to the board, and the board approved it. However, it turns out that, and I think I mentioned this, that I very stupidly was not aware that there are engineering costs involved in doing this. And it turns out the engineering costs are substantial. We've had a bid from Tetra Tech to do it for $6,740. And we need to do that in order to implement these two projects. So I move that we approve $6,740 for Tetra Tech to do the engineering work for these two projects.
I'll make a motion not to exceed $7,000.
Okay, I made the motion not to exceed seven.
Okay,
You're
I'll second it.
Any further questions on that one? As I say, I think I had sent you a document kind of outlining this. If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, passes 6-0. The next thing is, and you have all seen the survey that has gone out. I think I provided a little background, but when I told the President's Council that the GSCDD board had turned down our recommendation that the golf carts all travel in the right-hand vehicle lane, and instead had said that they should be traveling in the shoulder lane. There was quite a bit of negative reaction at the President's Council. And they decided they wanted to send a letter to the board objecting to this decision. And as we discussed it further, it seemed to make sense to survey the community to strengthen the case that certainly the President's Council thought was strong, that the carts be required to travel in the right-hand vehicle lane, and that the shoulder lane be exclusively for bicycle use. So we have undertaken this survey, and you've probably seen it. We also decided that since we were having a survey, we would put two other questions on the survey that the Safety and Security Work Group thought were kind of up in the air. One of them we discussed earlier, had to do with the trap gate. The other one we at least referenced a little bit earlier, and that had to do with when we should leave the exit gate down or up. So we are going to be awaiting the results of that survey, and it may result in recommendations from the Safety and Security Work Group to us to do something, make some changes. But most particularly on question one, which had to do with the golf carts, if we find that there is a significant majority of the community that agrees with our original recommendation, our plan is to return to the board and ask them to reconsider their decision on the golf carts. So we will be awaiting the outcome of the survey. I should tell you that the survey, we now have already had almost 1,000 responses to the survey, along with a lot of written comments, hundreds actually, which we're going to have to go through. But anyway, the survey seems to have stirred up some interest in this thing.
Who is the survey going to?
The survey's going to
I
everybody.
mean, when it comes out, do they come back to
To
the
the-
President's Council or to
The Safety and Security Work
Security?
originally.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the Safety and Security Group is gonna make sure that the data, how many votes per household do you get? One vote per household?
One per.
So they're gonna-
One per email address, right.
Well,
Well, one.
my wife's got a different email than I do.
No, one per household, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys
I
are,
filled one out, and my wife filled one out.
I know, I do too, and that's
Just
why
grab an
I'm-
email address, and many friends have done the same thing.
Well,
that's why,
And I think,
that's what
I
the heart of
think
what I'm
really
getting
that
at.
should be acceptable, because personal preference, my wife could feel completely different about something than I do.
That's your marital problem.
Thank you.
For the integrity of the thing, I believe, I agree with what Phil said, one per household. I don't know how you reconcile that, but,
Mine will count.
and then we look at the total number of potential votes, which should be no greater than 1,967,
That's right.
residences or ERUs. So
Yeah.
you guys are gonna ensure that part of it's correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's gonna be a fun job, because I know we both responded.
You both
Yeah,
responded.
I think that everybody did.
Apparently, Quentin Davis, who is running this thing, tells me that he has a way of sorting through that issue.
Then how does he decide how do you decide which vote